Good day. This is the video presentation of our research entitled The Influence of Internal Control System to the Organizational Effectiveness Among Selected SMEs in Panagua City. Now to start, we have Chapter 1, The Problem and its Setting. In this first chapter, the problem is introduced, research questions are stated, and the conceptualization, the limitations, assumptions, and importance of the study are explicated. Rationale. The rationale of the research is the reason for conducting the study. The rationale should answer the need for conducting the said research. It is a very important part as it justifies the significance and novelty of the study. This is why it is also referred to as the justification of the study. According to Orozco et al. 2015, as organizations face increasingly complex, competitive, and threatening environments, attention has been focusing on both day-to-day operations and adaptation to changing environmental conditions, and thus on how to enhance performance through improved effectiveness, reliability, and flexibility. An organization is said to be effective if it is able to meet the objectives subject to certain constraints and produce a desired effect without waste and with minimum expenditure of its resources. According to Jupiki 2010, an internal control system is a process that guides an organization towards achieving its goals. So this means that by establishing a strong internal control system, the organization promotes efficient and effective business processes capable of producing high-quality products or services that are in line with the organization's mission. Furthermore, it protects resources from waste by ensuring adherence to laws, regulations, contracts, and management directives. Next, we have the research objectives. Research objectives describe concisely what the research is trying to achieve. They summarize the accomplishments a researcher wishes to attain through the project and provides direction to the study. First, to assess the impact of internal control system among selected SMEs in Panagua City in terms of control environment, risk management, and monitoring. Second, to determine the level of organizational effectiveness among selected SMEs in Panagua City as to goal approach and resource control approach. Third, to determine the significant relationship between the level of internal control system and organizational effectiveness among selected SMEs in Panagua City. Lastly, to determine which of the internal control system domains significantly influence organizational effectiveness among selected SMEs in Panagua City. Now for the hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative statement about the relationship between two or more variables. It is a specific, testable prediction about what you can expect to happen in a study. The null hypothesis of the study will be tested at 0.05 level of significance, which states that there is no significant relationship between internal control system and organizational effectiveness among selected SMEs in Panagua City. Now, the next part will be the review of related literature, which will be presented by Ms. Amy Rinconada.
For the review of related literature, there are a lot of studies or readings that have been conducted with different proponents in accordance or regarding to these two variables, which are the internal control system and the organizational effectiveness. This can be found in some journals or articles that published on various sites in the internet. For the internal control system, which is our independent variable, according to Joseph et al. 2016, to establish a strong internal control system, the organization must promote efficient and effective business processes that capable of producing high-quality products or services that are in line with the organization's missions. It will also protect the resources from waste by ensuring the compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and management directives. As a result for this, the internal control system will generate and maintain trustworthy financial and management data in a timely reporting system. There are three indicators that we showed in our study in the independent variable. These indicators are the control environment, the risk management, and the monitoring. The control environment is the set of standards or processes and structures that serve as the foundation for implementing internal control throughout the organization. While the risk while the risk management is the is to identify the internal and external risks in the organization in terms of their significance, likelihood, and cause, and developing plans to prevent or reduce or avoid their occurrences. For the monitoring, it is the critical component of internal control in any organization because the purpose of this is to determine whether the internal control was carried out correctly, completely, and efficiently as designed for all three components. For our dependent variable, which is the organizational effectiveness, according to Muhammad et al. 2011, they define the organization as a group of people who shape their own business identity for a particular reason, while the effectiveness is defined as achieving the desired result within a set of resources. Therefore, the concept of organizational effectiveness refers to how successful a company is at achieving the goals it sets out to achieve. There are two indicators for the organizational effectiveness. These are the goal approach and the resource control approach. The goal approach viewpoint considers a company to be effective if its goals and objectives are met, while the resource control approach focuses on an organization's ability to leverage its environment in the acquisition of resources. They are driven by the simple yet overlooked fact that it is only in the arena of competition for scarce and valuable resources that the success of similar and dissimilar organizations can be compared. For the correlational between measures for the two variable can be seen in this chapter. According to Badara and Saiden 2015, the internal control mechanism or the internal control system and organizational effectiveness are linked in a significant way. The effectiveness of an organization's internal control system has a direct impact on management advice accuracy. Similarly, firms that reveal ineffective internal control systems have a higher likelihood of having management errors in their operations than firms that report successful internal control systems. Therefore, it is the duty of an organization's management to ensure that an appropriate internal control structure is in place to ensure that the organization's defined goals are met. For our theoretical framework, the theoretical framework serves as the structure that can hold or support a theory of our study. This will introduce and describe the theory that explains why the research problem under study exists. So our research is anchored in the theory of Mahadan et al. 2016. They claim that there is a widespread recognition of the value of internal control system in organizations and that their components are all implemented to varying degrees. The internal control system have a major impact on organization effectiveness. To achieve effectiveness and obtain a competitive advantage, organizational tactics should involve applying the components of internal control. This was also supported by Channer et al. 2015 and Whittington and Kurt 2001. For our conceptual framework, the conceptual framework includes one or more formal theories as well as other concepts and empirical findings from the literature. It is used to show the relationships among the two variables and how they relate to the research study. So for our independent variable, the Mayer et al. 2005 showed that there are three indicators for internal control system, and that is the control environment, the risk management, and the monitoring. This will provide context for any business activity that is critical to organizational effectiveness. While Thibodeaux et al. 1996 claimed that the organizational effectiveness has two indicators. These are the goal approach and the resource control approach, which measures the organizational effectiveness that will be used to evaluate the internal control system. The significance of the study or the importance of the study will help the owners of to understand how internal control influences the effectiveness of the organization. The internal control plays a critical role not only in large company but also in and medium enterprises, which is our respondents, because the internal controls establish safeguards to an organization's assets and minimize the opportunities of committing fraud and allowing errors to go undetected in an organization's daily operations. This will not only help the owners but also the users to assess the influence of internal control over the organization. The internal control will keep the assets of a company safe and keep the company from violating any laws while fairly recording the financial activity of the company in the accounting records. In our study, we are only defined two terms for the part of definition of terms. This will help for the readers to clarify them and better understanding the study's terminologies. We only define the independent variable and the dependent variable. For internal control system, we referred it to the organization's control, environment, risk management, and monitoring, which is obviously our indicators. And for the organizational effectiveness, it referred to measure goal approach and resource control approach. So Noriel Paol will discuss the next chapter of our study.
So, Chapter 2, the method, which consists of two topics. First is the research design. This study employs the quantitative and experimental research design, utilizing the correlation technique. The quantitative method is a well-thought-out technique for collecting the target respondents' data to respond to the query. The use of a survey is to organize the data. The study's main aim was to assess the extent of internal control system and utilizing effectiveness of SMEs in Panabo City. Second is the research local, wherein it is the location where the study was conducted. And third is the population in sample. Complete enumeration was used in the selection of the respondents. The subjects of the study were the managers or office in charge personnel of SMEs in Panabo City. The distribution of respondents listed in Table 1 were as follows: 2 from JK Trading, 2 from Novo Jeans, 2 from 3F Fortune Shoppers, 2 from Manolith Bake Shop, 2 from Panadero Bake Shop, 2 from Rose Bake Shop, 2 from GBA Appliances, 2 from Fiesta Appliances, 2 from Sabon Depot, and 2 from... The next is the research instrument. The instrument, adapted from the standardized survey of Mahadan et al. 2016, was revised to suit the content used to conduct the study for the both dependent and independent variable. The first part of the questionnaire is the independent variable that deals with the internal control system among selected SMEs with three indicators: control environment, risk management, and monitoring. Part 2 is the dependent variable, which is organizational effectiveness that has two indicators: goal approach and research control approach. Respondents will have to check their choice from a range 1 to 5. Next, the data collection. The following steps and procedures are undergone by the researchers in the collecting the data of the study upon the approval of panel members. The researchers first conducted an initial interview where they asked for the names of the managers or office in charge of the selected SMEs to address the letter asking permission to conduct the study. Then, the researchers sent a letter asking permission to the managers or office in charge. The questionnaire was validated by the validators. Upon approval, the researchers personally administered the questionnaire through Google Link forms. Finally, the researchers tallied and tabulated the data gathered from the questionnaire and were subject to statistical interpretation by the statistician. The statistical results were analyzed and interpreted. With the data collected, conclusions were drawn, and recommendations were formulated in accordance with the findings of the study. Lastly, the statistical treatment of data. The following are the statistical tools that used to conduct the study of data analysis and interpretations. First, the mean. This statistical tool was used to determine the influence of internal control system and the level of extent of an organizational effectiveness among SMEs in Panabo City. Second is the Pearson. The statistical tool was used to determine the significant relationship between internal control system and organizational effectiveness among selected SMEs in Panabo City. And lastly, the multiple regression analysis. This statistical tool was used to determine the influence of internal control system and organizational effectiveness among SMEs in Panabo City. That will be the end of our video presentation entitled The Influence of Internal Control System to the Organizational Effectiveness among Selected SMEs in Panabo City. Thank you.